Sudan, along with a lot of other countries around the world at the time, are fighting for self-determination. This idea was brought up during Woodrow Wilson's 14 Points. Sudan was split into north and south due to its geological terrain. Because of this, it was also governed slightly differently in each part. The northern part of Sudan was governed by British, but the southern part was indirectly ruled by the British's colonies. When they gained independence, they were administered separately. The north got its policies from Egypt, and the south struggled with political parties and organizations. Although recognized as an independent state, Sudan was still one country. Along with many battles and fights, Sudan managed to become one of the first African colonies to gain independence, next to the African Gold Coast.
This country was named Ghana and was the first African colony to be independent in 1957 before Sudan. Influence from other countries like Britain gave Ghana a new constitution, and the Conventional People's Party, or the CPP, became the leading party in Ghana. Britain granted a new constitution, and Ghana elected Kwame Nkrumah as its prime minister in 1951. Although this country was set up with rich resources and a good educational system, it fell due to corruption and mismanagement soon after its independence, similar to much of the other African colonies that gained independence.
Many of the neighboring countries saw these independent nations and wanted to be independent themselves, with the majority of the colonies being owned by the nations of Britain, Belgium, and France. With the independent nations, the race for power increased, including warfare and conflicts between the territories. They also faced many challenges on their way to their goals, such as multi-ethnic states, weak economies, along with the lack of educated citizens. Yet they managed to overcome these challenges and gained independence.
The Suez Canal is permanently closed due to the attack on Egypt by Israel. The Suez Canal is connecting the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. It was at the center of a war against Egypt and the combined forces of France, Britain, and Israel. This was influenced by the national buildup among Egyptian leaders. The French and British forces took control of the canal to later withdraw to a closed canal.
The war was fought between the Biafra and the British government to counter the secession of Nigeria. The Biafrans were aided by support from US and European organizations because of the propaganda showing the mass genocides of the Igbo people. With the war taking place in Nigeria, the oil production ceases and the economy begins to fall, and other countries are looking for alliances and protection for the future.
In the early 70s, the UN Security Council demanded the withdrawal of South Africa from Namibia. After reluctance from South Africa, the people of Namibia took matters into their own hands and fought for the cause. After a lot of hard work and dedication and assistance from the UN, Namibia finally gained its freedom from South Africa.
All Soviet support was now switched to Ethiopia. The Soviet Union began shipping in weapons and 15,000 troops to fight in Ethiopia. The troops were Cuban.
It was the only operation we conducted in full agreement with the Soviets. No such cooperation took place even in Latin America. Quite the opposite.
In 1977, Ethiopia joined the Soviet camps. This was a very big event because it increased tension between the Soviet Union and the United States during the Cold War. The influence of communism was a very big threat to the US. In Ethiopia, young Ethiopian children formed together in child armies to help defend their country. This was an important event because it symbolized the spread of communism throughout the East.
Labor strikes in the early 1970s led to the legislation of black union structures. These strikes led to changes both socially and economically. It was an important stepping stone toward a more modern Africa. These strikes gave workers education and training programs. The people ended up satisfied and the workforce in Africa was increased. This also gave the people a political conscience. Before, they had little knowledge of governing themselves and were afraid to step up, but now the people have confidence to make their own decisions.
After the Rwanda genocide, over 2 million natives fled to Zaire and had refuge camps in eastern provinces. The people responsible for the Rwanda genocides then later attacked the native Congolese people. In response, the Rwanda government invaded Zaire, leading to the collapse of the Mobutu government, and Commander Kabila claimed the presidency, renaming the country the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Rwandan refugees were then chased deep into the Congo's forest hiding. Even though there was a new government, the country was still a war zone. There was not true peace in the new nation until around 2002.
George H.W. Bush sent in troops to help Somali people, but as the fall of the government, the people were revolting among the U.S. troops, and the aid sent in by the troops were shot down and the war officially started, with a resulting casualty list of 315 killed and 812 wounded. This would later shape the U.S. foreign policy for decades to come and affect relationships today.
Weak economies. Weak economies.
Weak economies. Bush did 9/11.